How to Build a Business in a Pandemic. Brought to you by the Business and Brews Show and Trek CBD. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode and another round with Pedro. Tonight on How to Build a Business in a Pandemic, we're talking about interviewing and hiring. My name is Ryan Smelt.
My name is Nick Pione, and I have one challenge for you. If you haven't listened to the previous two episodes, you have to, because Pedro has been a fantastic contributor to the show, and you want to, number one, get to know him a little bit, and that was episode 1. And then we just deep dove into culture and values in episode 2. So Pedro, thank you for being back on the show with us. Why don't you just mention who you are and what you do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you guys. I've been having a great time with you doing these episodes. And my name is Pedro Meneses, and I own the Marketing Brewing Co. And we serve craft beer industries to help generate leads and build their social media marketing and everything related to marketing. And I also have a real estate business with my wife. So we both work together. You know, it's funny because she also do some of my stuff in the Marketing Brewing Company. So we are a team.
You're a team,
like
yeah,
it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
love it.
I love it,
love
man.
it.
Yeah.
So we thought, we talked, like I said, we talked a little bit about culture. We talked about, basically establishing your core values for your company. It makes the hiring process that much more smoother. I believe it's going to make turnover, in terms of employee turnover, a lot less in terms of that aspect. But why don't we get into it today? Why don't we talk about interviewing, and let's talk about, listen, I've probably interviewed hundreds of employees over my career. By no means do you ever get it right. I always tend to, I remember talking to one of my bosses once, and I was like, and we were going back and forth, and I had an employee on my team, and it just wasn't the right fit for the employee. It was a sales role, and this person just wasn't a salesperson. One of those people that they were an amazing person. Her name was Pam. I'm not going to mention last names, but just an amazing person, a person that you would love to hang out with and go to dinner with. But she just was in the wrong role. She had a hard time closing the customer. Right, just felt uncomfortable with that. Was good at building the relationships, but just hard time. And in sales, my opinion, by the way, that if you can't close, then you're not going to survive. Right? I mean, it's not about just building relationships. It's about putting food on the table. So at one point, you got to take that relationship, no matter how strong it is, and build it into a sale. And she just wasn't comfortable with that. So it was funny because the team of individuals I was leading was my boss at the time, former team. So I went to him and I said, "Hey man, listen, I'm going to have to let this person go. And, it's actually your fault." And he's like, "What do you mean it's my fault?" Right? And he's like, well, you hired this person on your team. And we had a joking conversation about that. And because, at the end of the day, you figure out that hiring is not a perfect science, and you want to give somebody an opportunity like we did with her. But it just didn't end up being the right fit. And she went on to do great things with another company that wasn't in sales. But again, what we're going to talk about today is not about, in my mind, perfecting the hiring process, because I don't think that there is perfection in this space, but we're going to hopefully help you identify the right individuals that can help your business grow.
Yeah. That's awesome.
One of the things that I have learned when it comes to the that process of hiring somebody, and like we talked in the previous episode, having your core values and all that stuff. Like when you have your core values and you know what kind of culture you want to build, you can use that as a base to know what people to hire. So one of the things that I have learned from some of my mentors and all that stuff is you can build some KPIs. That's KPIs. The key, what's it called? I forgot the name.
Key performance indicators.
Yep.
Yeah.
Key performance indicators, right? In your hiring process. And I remember one of my friends, what he do when he started hiring people is he put a specific instructions in his process. So let's say that he's going to run an ad that he's hiring people, right? He's like, okay, we're hiring people, click in the link below, submit your application, right? But once they click in the link, they go to the application, there's specific instructions in that application. So let's say that it's like, okay, what you need to do is fill out this form. And after you fill out this form, you need to send an email to this email. And then you need to do X, Y, Z, whatever. But they do it in a way that if people really miss one thing, is they're not going to continue to the next step of the process, because it's like, if people cannot follow these simple instructions, how in the hell they're going to be a good fit for us?
Yep.
It's pretty much like qualifying your leads, right? It's qualifying your customer. Yep. Like, that's something that I always talk about too, man. Is like you need to qualify the people that you want to work with and your clients and all that stuff. Like ask the right questions, because if there's a no for them, it means that it's not the right people for you. So it's the same thing when you hire people. Like why you don't build a process that it's based on your culture and based on your core values, and like ask specific questions. If people don't answer those questions, or they don't give you the answer that you're expecting, why in the hell are you going to hire them? It means that they're against your culture. They're not a right fit for your business.
Yeah, that fit is so important, Pedro, as you just mentioned there, because it is at the end of the day, right? This is the person that's going to be the face of your business, period, right? Yep. It doesn't matter what business you are, whether it's virtual or in person, they're going to be the voice that the customer hears. But I think it's something more than that to me. It's more than that to me, is that, you want to try your best through identifying the values. And we talked about this a lot on the last podcast in terms of my always preference is to hire for values versus skills, because I'm trying to find the right individual, not the right skill set. Essentially, Yep. Sometimes they converge and they're the same thing, but it's so important because at the end of the day, if this person is the wrong fit for my business, I think of it less as, it's going to hurt my business in terms of I'm going to have to get to that place where I'm going to have to let that person go. And at the end of the day, I took that person on because that person needs a job. And I don't want to have to be the person that pushes them out. I'll do it if I have to, right? That says there's no longer a job for you here, a place to make money for your family, essentially. So, I think I used that example of Pam before, and I kind of talked about how she went on to do great things, but it wasn't an easy process for us to both align on the fact that this was, for whatever reason, the wrong fit for her. And my heart went out to her, but I just knew that for our business at the time, she wasn't the right fit for that business. So I think you got to think of the employee in mind, that if you're hiring the right person, it's not only the impact to the business, but also the impact to them personally in terms of how you can make a difference or not in their life as well too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I agree with that. I think just in the beginning of this episode, we've already talked about basically two different stages where something like that takes place, because you have the interview process, mm-hmm. but then you have, the employee who already works there.
Yeah.
So, mm-hmm. I agree with you, Nick. There is a balance there as mm-hmm. to figuring out, is the employee a right fit? Once they do come on board, measuring that performance and paying close attention to, whether or not it is a consistent good fit for them mm-hmm. is super important, because that's when you're going to make those decisions. That's when you're going to set those goals. What's next? What are we moving towards? And so, I don't know how much my military experience plays into something like this, because essentially to get a job with the Army, you just have to raise your right hand and, pass all the tests, so to speak.
Okay.
But, more so in the aftermath. Yep. Once you get to your first permanent duty station, once you're permanent party, once you're involved in your unit, are these people, is this something you can see yourself excelling at? Mm-hmm. Do you learn to know and understand what your leaders expect of you and how to meet those expectations? At the end of the day, they have chapters. So if a soldier doesn't pass his PT test or gets in trouble for one reason or another, then there are, pathways to exit the military in a fashion where maybe you still get an honorable discharge, but hey, I got a buddy that struggled with a weight problem the entire time he was in, and it was like, he was coming in just right there, so to speak. And at the end of the day, he went into the first sergeant's office, and the first sergeant was like, we can chapter you out for being overweight, or, you can go through this program. And after 4 years of the same, just pushing hard, he was like, you know what? I think I'm about done. And so he took that pathway to get out of the military. Now, the downside to the military culture in that fashion is they talk as though you'll never even get a job at McDonald's, which is not true, because now he runs multiple locations of a restaurant. But the point in that is, even though there's not necessarily an interview process there, the culture it helps to determine how the individual adapts to it and whether or not it's a good fit.
So you're kind of hitting something that's kind of a little bit of a nerve for me, in terms of, if you're going to lead people and you're going to run a business or whatever it is long enough, right? You may have hired the perfect employee, but I think what you're saying is over time, motivation can wane, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it kind of falls into two things for me. When that motivation falls, right? You've had an employee for a number of years that was amazing for the first few years, but it fell off. Performance has fallen off, right? At the end of the day, what is it that's falling off? Is it a skill set? Meaning what they were doing 3 years ago was effective, but it's not anymore. So they need to be retrained, retooled, etc. Or is it a will thing? Right? They just lost the will to do the job.
Yeah.
I can tell you my experience, and again, just take it for what it's worth. But 20 years of leading teams, the will is the hardest one, right? You try to engage people and you try to get them back on board, but if they've just, for whatever reason, personal or not, just lost the will to do the job and their performance is waning, then it comes a time to have that discussion. I would say this, in my journey, earlier on in my life, it was much more confrontational in my leadership career, in terms of when that employee performance started dropping off, it became adversarial. It was me against them, and I was trying to get them out of the company, essentially, right? Versus in the latter part of my career, when I just kind of took the time to understand the employee more, it became more about getting us both to realize that doesn't matter what it is, will or skill, that this is just not the right role for you anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like your friend that had gained weight. Do you really want to do the work to lose the weight? And if they turn to you and say, not really, I'd rather be a civilian and be eating cheeseburgers or whatever and do what I want to do. That's great. Let me help you find the right path to the next opportunity. And I can say that with my heart, is that those were the best feeling conversations for those uncomfortable outcomes when someone is going to be losing their job, but when they feel like you have their support. And I wrote recommendations for these people, in terms of, this is an amazing person. This wasn't really the job for him, right? But you should absolutely take him on your team. So to me, that is something that I think every organization is going to face over time, is that you're going to have employees that potentially go up and go down, right? Some of them you're going to be able to bring back and say, hey, listen, let's get you back on the team. Some are going to continue to perform at a lower level, and you're going to have that conversation that says, let's find you something different.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. That's important, especially those conversations that you had with them, offering the support on their way to their next adventure, so to speak. Yeah,
but it comes back to your values. It comes back to what Pedro talked about in the last episode, and what we're talking about is that if you have the values, and you have the values that you're a people-centric organization, or you respect people, just because that person's not performing for you doesn't mean that you should have any disdain for them, right?
Yeah.
It just, you got to figure out why they're not performing and whether you want, or whether they can be salvaged. But at the end of the day, if this is not the right role for them, help them find something else, because your core value is whatever it is. And I think mine was always respect for people. But if your core value is respect for people, then I'm going to do what's right for my business, but I'm not going to any way go against my value of respecting people. I'm going to do both, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pedro, I know you're looking at bringing other people to the team. I'm definitely interested in hearing, what I want to stay kind of general with this, but basically like what your plan is, or what your thoughts are on potentially bringing people into the team you've invested this time, this energy, this money into the hiring process, and then you find out that maybe they're not a good fit for your company, or your company is not a good fit for them. Like, what are your thoughts on that? What does that kind of look like to you?
Well, that's what I was talking a little about, that example of that friend, of how he narrows down the people that he wants to hire with. That's something that we probably going to implement too, like we're going to have like specific KPIs to make sure that if people get to that point, okay, this is a good fit or not. But, I guess at some point, and I'm telling you this because I've been there, it just reminded me of my last job back in Guatemala. I used to work for, actually used to work for the Korean embassy back in Guatemala.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a fun job, but I pretty much got not arrested, but they handcuffed me and walked me out of the building because I almost beat the shit out of somebody there. So
wait. Are we just gonna skip through that? Like fast forward? Are we gonna I feel like there's more there.
I mean,
sorry.
So I was the assistant of pretty much, she was like the right hand of the ambassador, and I was his assistant, her assistant, but I used to work like in the front desk. It was like four of us, like taking care of different things. And I have this Korean guy working, two Korean guys next to me working with me. And, it was around November. No. Yeah, I think it was November. I don't remember. But it was a very slow season, man. It was like 2 weeks of no customers. Nobody was in there. Like it was boring. So I started playing music, and I was just enjoying my time and doing my work and whatever and playing music, and I was just trying to get through it, and then this guy one day came in and was like, "Can you just turn the volume down?" But he was like yelling at me, like, "Get the fuck out of here, man. I don't listen to you." So he got so pissed that there was like this trash can like in between both of us. So he kicked the trash can and that shit hit me on the face. Like, ouch. It was a small trash can, so it was like you kick him, you can literally hit somebody in the face or hit me in the face. So the next thing that I did, I jump on him and grab him on the neck and I fucking kill you, motherfucker. And like everybody in the entire floor hear me, so they had to bring the security and all that stuff. They handcuffed me and then took me out of the building.
That's exactly the background we needed. Thank you. That's great. And I completely understand now and support you.
It's like I was so pissed that day, man. But I think that's what I found out, that I cannot work for nobody. But I think it is important to have those indicators. Like again, like you can, based on the type of people the people you want to hire, the type of people that you want to grow with you. Like you can have those indicators to see, like, okay, this is gonna be the right fit or not. And have different questions or something, in place in your process to know if they can be the right fit or not. I think that's very, very important. But that's something that we actually doing right now, because my wife, she's a badass, man. She's a closer. That's the reality.
Yeah.
But sometimes she gets very, very excited and is like, "Oh yeah, she's like, I found these people. Are they gonna join us and all that stuff?" I was like, "Did you ask the question that we supposed to be asking to make sure that they're the right fit? Because if they're not the right fit, they're gonna be a pain in the ass, and they're gonna give us. It's gonna be hard to deal with them, and they're gonna make us waste our time instead of building people that is going to be productive, because once that we're building our team right now, our goal is to provide all the tools and educational resources that we have, like my goal is, like, we already have a Facebook group, it's a private group just with the people in our team. And the goal is like having like motivational stuff in there, like once a week, like Mondays, like, okay, we're going to start our week with the right mindset, like talk about something important. Talk about something that we do sometimes in business, and then have teaching how to do marketing, how to generate leads, how to leverage all the tools that they have. So, if somebody that wants to join our team, really doesn't have the intentions to learn all that stuff, like you don't belong here. You know, it is that simple.
I think you're touching on something that I really believe in. And I know, Pedro, you can probably relate to this from a marketing perspective, is that, marketing, you want to create a customer persona. So who is your target customer, right?
Yep.
So it's a fictional exercise, right? But it's a fictional exercise that says, hey, this is Sally. She's 35 to 40. Yeah. For Trek CBD, she's feeling, the stress of homeschooling kids and all those kind of things right now that's going on COVID. So we very much adopted that approach when we're hiring for Trek CBD, is that we started to develop employee personas. And it was based on one strategy, is that we know at Trek CBD, we've been successful in creating an exceptional customer experience. People that come here, our reviews speak to experience. So that's a challenge, right? Because we're the owners right now who are driving that experience. So how do you find employees that are going to create the same experience for the customer? Because literally, sometimes you've been here, Ryan. Sometimes we will spend 15 to 20 minutes with one customer when there's no one else in the store, just listening and understanding them, and just kind of being there, being someone as a kind of a support piece for them. So it's a great opportunity. It's a great challenge at the same time. So we created these employee personas that talked about the fact that who would be the ideal employee that would work for Trek CBD under one simple strategy. We basically got to find talent that we can't afford. Okay, that's the challenge, right? Because we could be paying people $20 an hour to do this, right? In a very competitive job market, and we can't afford to pay that, obviously. So sorry, anybody listening right now, we can't afford that right now. But how do we find somebody, right, at like say $12 to $15 an hour that's going to deliver an exceptional customer experience? And when we did that exercise, we came down to one thing: we want to find people that are currently out of the workforce right now, that have a deep skill set, that understand customer service, that are looking to come back into the workforce on a part-time basis. And we're willing to, as a company right now, hire more than one of those people to fill the 40-hour work week. So, with that in mind, I'm sorry. With that in mind, we said, okay, if that's the persona, then this is who we're looking for. Now we know how to write basically a posting, or a job description that speaks to that person, that says, hey, have you been out of the workforce? Are you looking for some part-time hours? Are you looking to make someone's day when it comes to healthcare? And whatnot, all those kind of things that we're doing around that. And we want to specifically speak to that person. Pedro, I'd love to hear you give me some feedback on this or whatever.
No, what you just said, man, that's a lot of people take that exercise for granted. Like building your customer avatar and all that stuff. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, you're not gonna believe this, but when I started doing all the marketing for breweries, like 99% of the people that I talk to, they have no fucking clue who was their perfect customer.
Right. Right. Who is it?
They never went. Like they don't know. And no, a lot of business owners, they don't do that exercise, but they take it for granted. It is such a powerful, and like you said, it's very simple. It's like something that you just create, and who's that person, you name it, whatever, your customer avatar, and people take it for granted. But it's funny because you can actually use that for everything, and like I said before, you get what you focus on, right? So if you write down like, okay, who's my perfect employee, and you write down who's that perfect employee, how they look, how they talk, how they think, how they work, their ethic, their whatever it is, like you're gonna attract that employee. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you this: when my last relationship before I met my wife, that was a really bad relationship. I actually took the time, and it's funny because she did the same. Like before we knew each other, I took the time and I write down, okay, I want to meet this type of woman. And I literally write down the perfect wife. Like she has to look this way. She has to be a redhead because I love redheads, right? And she has to be this way, and she has to talk this way, and she has to be in the same page as I am. And she has to love all these entrepreneurs, like all that stuff. She wrote down that she wanted to marry a Latin man who knew how to dance and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? end up finding each other.
Simple may not be easy, right? As I always say, right? But it's no surprise that you found each other in that way, or it's no surprise that when you were saying before how your wife kind of challenges you around, well, when you interview somebody, are they this person? If you're aligned on that from the get-go, if you've created that persona and you say, hey, I just found whatever it was, Sally, who was your fictional persona person, then it makes it so much easier, right?
Yeah.
To align on the whole hiring process. Yeah. Now, and again, caveat here, Sally may not be perfect, right? None of us are perfect as individuals, but at least you're kind of narrowing it down to finding the ideal employee.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, skills, like people can learn the skills, but if they have like the right mentality, the right ethics and everything, I mean, and that's what I'm saying, like I have used that exercise for everything. Like I use the same exercise for I have my customer avatar for the Marketing Brewing Company. I have a customer avatar for our real estate business. I have a customer avatar for the people I want to be surrounded with. I made a customer avatar pretty much for my wife, and that's what showed up in my life. So people take it for granted, but go ahead.
No. So we talked about some of the last shows that we talked about how, in my belief, right, hiring for values is much more important than hiring for skills. Skills is easy, right? To say this person knows how to do a job, they can start tomorrow, I will have little or no interaction with them. They're just going to hit the ground running until you find out 3 months later that they don't share your values and they're creating disaster in your business, right? So along those lines, essentially, when I think about that, right, when you're identifying values for people and you're saying, okay, these are the right values that I need to identify in the ideal employee, it just makes the process for you so much easier. And all the time you're going to invest into that employee and teaching them skills is going to come back to you tenfold because they've already got the values part down. So the skills that you're teaching them, you know what? As long as with one caveat, I would say caveat with this, as long as you can try in the interview process to identify learning agility. And what do I mean by that? Right? So if I can identify in the hiring process that this person has my values, but do they have a learning agility? Meaning maybe they've been in different careers. So they were, hey, listen, I was the top waiter or waitress at this restaurant, evidenced by this. When I worked at this corporation or I was in sales, I was the top or one of the top salespeople based on this. If I can show that they went from one industry to another industry and they were successful in each one of those industries, however, and I'm not going to define this today, but however you want to define success. But if I always look for people that have been in different situations, that have been tested in some way, like I said, measure it how you want to, and they've been successful, then I know that, you know what? They've got the values I want. Why would I believe anything different that if I bring them on here, and it's on me now, if I give them the right training, they're not going to be successful here because they've already proven that they can weave in and out of different industries and be successful. That's the only caveat that I would say there is when you're hiring on values, do try to test learning agility. And it could be, and don't overcomplicate this. It could be school. They could be a first time hire, right? And it could be in school, they showed different learning agility, right? I mean, so just what it is. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of my experience on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So basically the process we follow now, it's essentially 3, I guess maybe 3.5 interviews, including an initial phone call, a preliminary interview, which is actually done via recorded video.
Okay.
There's programs out there that do that. The one we use is called HireNami. That's in no way a plug because I couldn't care less. There's a ton of them though. And then second round interview. So that's technically the third. Because the first phone call is really just, we found your resume, we think you might be a good fit. And then after that interview, there's another phone call. And so throughout that process, Okay, so I lost Pedro, but it'll be all right.
I'm here.
It's my headset. It died, but I'll just turn the volume up on my phone or something. Anyways, what I was saying is basically during the interview where I am directly involved is where we're learning student mentality. And so that's where, all the questions we ask, the breakdown we go through as it directly relates to the company, and really what we're looking for and what they're interested in and what their goals are is what we dive deep into. And so I believe, number one, the multiple interview with multiple people process is successful because it helps to remove the emotion as well as to be able to dive deep into who that individual is as a person. And number two, it helps us determine if they're actually a good fit, because I cover everything during my interview process, which is, maybe approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And that's asking them questions and explaining the company and how everything goes. And then during the phone call that takes place after that, I'm full commission. And so what the position is full commission. Obviously, we don't introduce it like that. It's merit based. We talk about the number of sales and how someone is compensated for those sales. So it's a little bit more in depth. It's not just like, oh, this is a full commission position. Compensation is something that we cover as an entire slide and section of the interview process. And so what takes place after that during the phone call is the person goes, well, I'm really, one example is I'm really looking for a merit-based compensation program. I'm looking for a full commission sales position like I was. This fits into what I was looking for. And so it's okay, we're moving on to the next question or the next part of the phone call. And then if they say something to the opposite, like, I'm looking for something a little more secure, I would prefer something on salary or hourly. That's like, now we know it's not going to be a good fit. And so we're like, hey, that's the reason why we do this process. That's the reason why we hold these conversations. We really appreciate your input and your time. Looks like it's not going to be a good fit. And then from there, we just part ways.
So how long is the process end to end?
To be honest with you, like from when we find the resume until the completion, I'd say could be as little as a single day.
Oh, wow.
It depends.
Okay.
There's a lot of factors involved there, but I'd say the longest it would take is maybe a week.
I applaud that, because I think what you're describing is the thoroughness of the process and the objectivity of the process.
Well, there's 3 people involved in that. So
love it.
So one of the reasons why it's so quick is because no individual person has to do every step. And then, a lot of it, just like we talked about before, depends on whether or not a person, I think Pedro mentioned it, following through with the steps in the process. If they, when we get on the preliminary interviews and we watch them, because our part is pre-recorded, they just record their part. And true story, for example, somebody doesn't have a shirt on, might not be a good fit.
You had somebody that didn't have a shirt on during the interview?
It's not just one.
It's not just one.
Interesting.
Wow. So the whole no shoes, no shirt, no service doesn't apply?
I think it's because people think since it's a video interview, it's a lot less casual. One of the things in there is we are business professional. I don't expect everyone to wear a suit and tie in a video interview, but
shirt.
Look. It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game.
I mean,
at the end of the day,
you had me at, it's not, maybe not a shirt and tie. I get it. Whatever.
Pedro's over here grinning from ear to ear.
Okay. All right. Hey, this is and again, I love the thoroughness of the process. The reason I asked that question was the fact that I think some people take too long in terms of, we want to do 10 different interviews. Listen, it's not a perfect process. It never will be. It never will be an exact science.
Yeah.
So the fact that you think running people through 10 interviews is a good idea, trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
Get as many as you think you need. I think 3 is a good sweet spot. But after that, listen, man, they're gonna do what they're gonna do basically.
Yeah.
And I think one of the coolest things I'd ever experienced was I was part of a leadership team. We went out to Vegas for a meeting and we toured Zappos, the shoe company.
Yeah.
You guys familiar with the shoe company? And it's they have an interesting kind of caveat to their hiring process. So they'll hire somebody based on values, okay? And they'll go through the whole process. And then they have something like, I don't want to butcher this, but let's just say it's a multi-week training process. Once you're hired, you go through a training process for multi-weeks. Now, Zappos is known for their customer service. Like you can call them up and say, hey, listen, I know you're a shoe company, but I really like to have a pizza delivered to me, and they'll get a pizza delivered to you, right? So they're looking for a very unique type of employee, right? But at the end of that exhaustive training period, not interviewing, but training period, they actually offer you a check. And they say, is this everything what you expected? If not, you know what? We just invested all this time, all this money into you, but still, we're willing to pay you to walk away. Why? Because they know that after all that, the cost of a bad hire is more than just giving somebody 2 weeks pay and telling them, hey, listen, this is great. You got to experience us. Hope you liked it. But if you don't feel like you can deliver it, we'll just part ways, basically. Yeah. I thought that to me was one of the most extreme examples of really putting your money where your mouth is, basically, and saying that we want to have a really, exceptional hiring process. But at the end of that process, we know that in the training process, people might discover, oh shit, do I really have to do this every single day? I got to be really nice to people every single day. And they're going to say, no, it's not really not for me. I can't do that every day. I'm willing to walk away, but we're not just going to let you walk away. We're going to pay you to walk away because we don't do that. So it's just, to me, was the ultimate discipline of finding the right person, behind that.
Yeah, I think what I can say, man, is that exercise of finding who's your perfect customer, and you can do the same for your perfect employee and your perfect spouse, whatever. There's a video. Oh, for real, man. It's a very powerful exercise, and there's a video on YouTube. It's called Core Influence by Frank Kern. He is a badass marketer, man. And he is actually the one who pushes all this concept of creating your customer avatar. But it's called Core Influence. It's like a 2-hour video. Yeah. And but it's worth watching because he goes over all that process of how you can build that perfect customer, and you can use the same exercise to build the perfect employee and the perfect people you want to attract to your business. So it is worth watching.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, to me, it's not overcomplicating the process. To me, it's about identifying, like we talked about in the previous podcast, what is your values, right? What is your mission? Okay. Yeah. Creating an employee avatar, hiring for that more so than skills. If you can find the skills too, great, right, line it up. But then at the end of the day, I think, Pedro, you said it the best too, then, is that once you get what you think is the ideal employee through the hiring process, through the interview process, then how are you going to measure that employee's performance, right? And how are you going to make sure that you didn't think they were the best fit, that they are the best fit? And then to me, it really is about, for you and the employee, it's not just about you, it's not about the business, it's a mutual thing. It's about then saying, okay, how much time are we going to give this, and how are we going to measure it before we essentially either say, you know what, you're amazing and I want to give you more money actually for working here, or you know what, it's just not what we thought it was going to be, you and me. And whether you're Zappos and you do it right after the training process, or whether you're 3 months in, whatever your timeline is, to say, I think I have enough information to say that probably, like I said before, it's not just me, it's probably you, if we have the right conversations, that figure out that this is not the right job for you. And how can I help you find your next role while I am basically finding the person to replace you? To me, it's just that simple.
Yeah.
But it's the respect for people in that process that makes it work mutually beneficially.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think we might be drawing to an end on the hiring and the interview.
Yeah.
I think this is some really good content. I really appreciate Pedro's perspective because number one, I not only thought of the ideal customer avatar thing being applied to employees, but also your wife.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's amazing.
I'd like to think that I did that on accident with Toya, but it worked out. It definitely was not an intentional, I'm going to sit down and write this out type deal like Pedro did, but it worked out in the long run. So
to me, I think we kind of wrap up every podcast the same way, and it's because this podcast comes from the heart and essentially says that, digest this podcast, share it, like it, subscribe to our podcast. But even more so, I think what we want this podcast to be is even more than some other podcasts. We want it to be interactive. So if you liked it, like it. If you don't like it, give us some feedback, okay, around that. But also at the same time, if you're kind of want some deeper information around anything we talked about today, you can reach me at Nick Pione. It's NickPione, and you can find me on LinkedIn. You could find me on Facebook too, under the same name. You could find me at trekcbd.com, TREKCBD.com. And this is not a pitch for paid consulting. I'd be more than happy to talk to you and help you through your challenges in terms of interviewing and hiring. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about how to build a business in a pandemic, is that we're trying to share with you our experiences and help you maybe avoid some of these pitfalls that we kind of work through. Same, I know, for you.
No, definitely. And I don't do business consulting, so I can't charge for it.
No.
I do have a pretty solid interview process developed that not only works on a regular basis for me at my job, but also works for me at my company because I did not find Joe out the gate. So I think it's super important to realize that I have something that works. And if someone has questions about that, how it works or what to do, how to implement it into their company, I'm definitely willing to go over that with them. It's just Ryan at businessandbrewshow.com. And I'd be happy to help you out as well. Pedro, tell us where people can find you and how they can reach out to you and talk to you.
The easiest way, man, pedromeneses.online. You have all my information there from the real estate and the marketing, like podcast, or just Pedro Meneses on social media, man. Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't really check LinkedIn, but I'm there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of our podcast. I know this is going to bring a lot of value to people, and I think your perspective is very, very important. So I appreciate that, man.
And you know what? Man. This is probably going to drop after Thanksgiving. I'm sure of that, actually. But either way, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a safe and happy one to everybody. We'd love to have you follow us on the rest of this journey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
How to build a business during a pandemic. This show is brought to you by Trek CBD. You can check them out at trekcbd.com. Written and produced by the Business and Brew Show. Find more episodes at businessandbrewshow.com. Hosted by Nick Pione and Ryan Smelt. Guest host Gavin